I want to take us back to December 26th of 1910. We, along with tens of thousands of others, have come to Los Angeles to go to the Dominguez Hills Air Meet. This is a place a bit south of downtown near San Pedro, California, where many daredevils have gathered from all over the world to do something very few of us have ever done. They're going to fly. Very few of us are brave enough to pioneer and push the limits of what we can achieve. But those that are, pave the way for the rest of us. And by taking a closer look at what they leave behind, we can come to appreciate just how far we've climbed. See, it's only been 7 years since the Wright brothers took their iconic flight. The world has become pretty fascinated with this new invention. People have come to this particular air meet because money has been put for competitions in things like altitude, speed, and something called bomb throwing. The Natural History Museum's Becoming Los Angeles exhibit showcases some incredible objects from this time, this early aviation history of LA. Things like engines of the planes that they were riding, which in my opinion look a lot more like kites than they do planes. One of my favorite exhibits is a barometer. This humble box is actually used in those early airplanes to judge altitude measurements. And the one at the Natural History Museum particularly belonged to a gentleman named Archibald Hoxsey. Now Hoxsey in 1910 was a 26-year-old pilot. He started his aviation career really as a car mechanic, and when he got in touch with the Wright brothers, he became an aviation mechanic and eventually got the opportunity to become a pilot for them, doing incredible work and displaying these acrobatics all over the United States. Now in 1910, Hoxsey was flying high as he had gained recognition not only for being the first person to pilot at night, but also for a few months back convincing then President Theodore Roosevelt to come on a ride with him, probably against the better judgment of his advisors. Theodore Roosevelt is actually the very first president to have ever ridden in an airplane. Hoxsey at the time was looking to break the altitude record. He was in competition against the current record in 1910, which was little less than 2 miles up, set by a Frenchman whose name I cannot pronounce. Leganieux? Leganieux.
L-E-G what?
He had mentioned to the Los Angeles Herald that he would smash the record or something else would smash. However, he wasn't the only one going out for glory. Another French aviator named Hubert Latham was also competing. He was on a monoplane, a one-winged airplane that at the time was considered to be the most beautiful airplane in existence. He had called it Antoinette. Hoxsey, undeterred by this competition, he took off climbing against a 30-mile-an-hour wind, which left many pilots at the time tethered to the ground. Quite dangerous conditions to fly. Actually, most of them could not go above 6,000 feet. Hoxsey, deciding that he might have better luck out in open ocean, decided to fly miles towards the Pacific. As you in the stands watch this competition unfold, you notice that Hoxsey's plane gets smaller and smaller and eventually becomes a speck as he starts to ascend. However, as you're trying to squint and look at this airplane, someone yells and they point to Antoinette. The monoplane was struggling against that very wind and was unable to land. He begins to circle around the meet. Many folks were concerned that he was running out of fuel. He crash lands into a barbed wire fence. People yelling and concerned. As you get closer to the wreckage, you see Hubert Latham coolly smoking a cigarette. He would eventually take one of the broken wings and light it on fire. Now, as things are heating up on the ground, things are a lot colder in the sky. Hoxsey is ascending higher and higher. His experience tells him that he's already reached the limit. Further and further up, the temperature gets lower and lower, and the air becomes thinner and thinner. He eventually comes right above the air meet. However, he is still that speck in the sky. You on the ground just see something getting a little closer, a little bigger and bigger. As he gets to eye level, he begins to circle around the air meet, eventually landing right in front of the judge's box. You, the judges, and the organizers all rush to meet him. And as you get closer, you notice he looks a little bit more like a popsicle than anything. People around him are asking, "Did you get it?" Being too exhausted to answer, a smile comes across his face as People grab the barometer that you see here at the museum and open it, and when they see what's inside, people erupt and cheer, hoisting Hoxsey onto their shoulders. Hoxsey had gone 11,474 feet, beating the record by nearly 900 feet. At that moment, Hoxsey had become a hero, taking the record back to the United States and pushing the limits of what we can do. Later on, he would describe his ascension. He said it was the most terrifying cold he'd ever felt. And he mentioned that airplanes would go a lot higher than he did. However, more precautions would have to be taken in terms of temperature conditions. Tragically, this success was short-lived. On December 31st, only 5 days after this incredible feat, and 1 day before he was scheduled to sit on top of a float in Pasadena's Rose Bowl, Archibald Hoxsey decided he wanted to beat his record again. Unfortunately, this time he was not so successful. As he descended, he crash-landed, dying instantly. Hoxsey was a true inspiration. He was a pioneer and led the way for many more people who, didn't matter where they came from, if they were brave enough, could push the limits of what we can do. When President Roosevelt heard of this tragic accident, he paid tribute to his friend, saying, "Hoxsey was a man unafraid. Such men as he are the ones who accomplish things in the sphere of science and of all activity." I would like to thank you for taking this journey through time, and if you would like to learn a little bit more about the incredible history of Los Angeles aviation, please feel free to visit the Natural History Museum's website at www.nhm.org. Thank you.